Just one day after the US announced Project Freedom was now in play to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, US President Donald Trump has said that he is halting this operation in a bid to reach a deal with Iran.
Now, in a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote that he was pausing Project Freedom following a request by mediator Pakistan and other countries. He added that great progress was made towards a complete and final agreement with Tehran. However, Trump wrote that the US would maintain a complete blockade of Iranian ports.
Later, while speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, Trump dismissed Iran's military capability and said that Tehran should wave the white flag of surrender, but is too proud to do so. He urged Tehran to do the smart thing and avoid an all-out war.
Do the smart thing, and because we don't want to go in and kill people, we really don't. I don't want to. It's too tough. Great people. I know the people. I have so many Iranian friends from New York and from other places over the years. They're great people. I don't want to kill those people.
Further, Trump accused Iran of playing games and said Tehran's military has been completely destroyed, leaving them with no option but to plead for a deal with the United States. Listen to this.
Fighter aircraft from the sea.
Iran wants to make a deal. What I don't like about Iran is they'll talk to me with such great respect, and then they'll go on television, they'll say, we did not speak to the president. We did not, we did not speak to the president. So they play games, but let me just tell you, they want to make a deal. And who wouldn't? When your military is totally gone, we could do anything we want to them. Who wouldn't?
Separately, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the US military operation against Iran is over, but he stopped short of saying the conflict is over or cannot be restarted. Addressing reporters at the White House, Rubio said that US efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz is not an offensive operation and the US would prefer the path of peace.
The operation, Epic Fury, is concluded. We achieved the objectives of that operation. I'm not going to, we're not cheering for an additional situation to occur. We would prefer the path of peace. What the president would prefer is a deal.
Further, Rubio said that US and its Gulf allies have proposed a UN resolution threatening Iran with sanctions if it doesn't halt attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz or stop imposing illegal tolls and disclose the placement of all mines to allow the freedom of navigation.
Rubio called the proposed resolution a real test for the UN. Earlier, a similar resolution was vetoed by China and Russia. Rubio also informed that 10 civilian sailors have died in the Strait of Hormuz so far.
Meanwhile, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has warned Iran that any attack on commercial shipping in Hormuz will be met with a devastating response. The Pentagon chief said that the US is not looking for a fight, but it will not hold back either if attacked by Iran.
To what remains of Iran's forces, if you attack American troops or innocent commercial shipping, you will face overwhelming and devastating American firepower. The president has been very clear about this.
Iran, too, has shot off a warning. In a statement, the IRGC has vowed a firm response if ships diverge from the route approved by Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. As tensions flare over the control of the critical waterway, the UK MTO reported that a cargo vessel was struck by an unknown projectile.
Furthermore, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has accused the US of pursuing a policy of maximum pressure to force Iran to surrender to its unilateral demands. Now, Pezeshkian asserted that meeting such a demand was impossible.
Pezeshkian also held a telephone conversation with Iraq's Prime Minister designate Ali al-Zaidi, who said that Iraq could help mediate between Iran and the US, and the talks come amid renewed tensions between Tehran and Washington in the Strait of Hormuz, even as a comprehensive peace deal eludes both sides. Pezeshkian, in that phone call with the Iraqi designate Prime Minister, said he has urged the US to remove military threats from the region. All right, for more of this, we're now being joined live by Colonel David B. DeRoche. He is a professor at Fire Marshall Institute and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Colonel David, Thanks so much for making time. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Let's start right off. I'll quickly go over these statements. A pause in Project Freedom within a day of it being launched. State Secretary Marco Rubio saying that the offensive military campaign is over and they've achieved all the objectives. Secretary of War saying US is not looking for a fight, insisting that the ceasefire is not over. Then the Iranian side, the Iranian military denies launching any attack on UAE. The Iranian foreign minister said that there's no military solution to a political crisis, and Pezeshkian mentioning that he's urging the US to remove military threats. Is there a douse of tensions from both sides? How do you assess it?
Well, both sides are under significant stress, and they're having to say some things that don't make sense for reasons of the situation they're in. So it is because of the U.S. War Powers Act, which the Trump administration is trying to circumvent, which is pretty much what every president has tried to do since the War Powers Act was passed. It's important that they say, no, the military operation that we use, that we started in February, that's over. That's an internal U.S. Legal gamesmanship. Pezeshkian, his remarks, basically he does not want military conflict to resume. He's also speaking to the American public, which is overwhelmingly against this war. People like the idea of diplomacy because it doesn't involve fighting, but I don't think that that's acceptable to Trump, who knows that the Iranian playbook is once you enter into negotiations, you just spin them out as long as possible. And you can outlive, the supreme leader is the supreme leader until he dies, but the president is only president for 4 years at a time. So you get a little bit of unreality there. I mean, the situation was caused by military power. You can certainly power through it and end it by military power. Other than that, I think that both sides. The thing that's really remarkable to me is the Iran disavowing the attacks on the UAE. That is just beyond. It's like saying black is white. So I think the UAE is really the wild card here. The U.S. and Iran are kind of feeling each other out, but the UAE is very, very inflamed, and there are some reports that they've already taken action on their own. I think they may still do this.
Absolutely, Colonel Roshan, while talking about the strikes on UAE, Iran has struck the UAE for 2 straight days, and we understand that it's neither arbitrary nor it's a random picking of a target. What do you think is the message that Tehran is trying to send here?
Yeah, so the place that the UAE is targeting is Fujairah, which is the only Emirati port on the Indian Ocean. So that basically, there's a pipeline that runs there. It's small, but the UAE has access directly to the Arabian Sea and thus the Indian Ocean without transiting the Strait of Hormuz if they use Fujairah. So what Iran is trying to do is to say, nope, there's no way out of this. We are the masters here, and you will obey our orders. So that Iranian targeting is in keeping with their overall strategic aims. Bear in mind, the Iranians are very proud of saying, oh no, we have a decentralized mosaic strategy, they call it, which says that all of their targets and the firing orders were given out in advance of any conflict. That overlooks, what that means is that they decided before there was a war to target all of the GCC states, all of which denied the U.S. access, basing an overflight for this. They basically tried to stay neutral. But what you can see, Iran's deliberate targeting of them, regardless of their behavior, shows something other than just a response to the American-Israeli strikes. It's a long-standing plan aimed at control.
Colonel, I wanted your assessment on this because I'm very intrigued to know how you see it. Again, the Secretary of State has said that all objectives were achieved. We understand that the nuclear dust has not been retrieved. Nuclear program, we don't know what has been achieved in terms of Iran. They've not said that we're not going to continue to enrich uranium. As far as their missile program is concerned, there is no clarity on that. And Iran is armed in terms of its missiles and drones. They are still holding that capacity to carry out an attack, even though they deny who attacked UAE. Let's keep it there for now. But what was achieved over the course of these last number of weeks since February 28th?
Well, first off, recall the reason why we're here. The issues the United States has with Iran have existed for decades. But what drove President Trump into action was he said that he would avenge and support the democracy protesters who were massacred by the Iranian regime in January. I think that President Trump felt that his policy of economic maximum pressure was leading to massive uprisings that were on the verge of overthrowing the regime. But the regime killed between 15,000 and 42,000 of their own people. We don't know the numbers because there's no free press and internet, but it's certainly the greatest killing of Persians by Persians since the 17th century. So that's what led him to do this. Now, many of the people who gave those orders, almost all of the Revolutionary Guard leadership has been killed. So that's, when President Trump says he wants to do something, he likes to be able to go back and say, I did this. So that's one goal. The rest of them are uncertain. I mean, we know that the nuclear program is damaged. We don't know how much because President Trump chose to bomb it, which you can't be certain how much you've destroyed. There's a report out today by the Institute of Study of War that says that, and if you look at the firing capacities here, Iran's missile capability is basically just a harassment capability. It's not militarily significant. They're launching small strikes at civilian infrastructure. They're not launching barrages at, say, the Israeli Air Force that would actually destroy something of military significance. So there is a significant degradation, but you have to balance that against the effectiveness of Iran's attacks against neutral civilian shipping in the Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran's blockading of the international shipping channels in the Omani territorial waters. I think that on the negative side of the ledger for Iran, their sustained attacks, they fired about 6 times as many missiles at the Gulf Cooperation Council as they have at Israel. That really, the idea that they are a good neighbor, it will take regime change in a generation for Iran to be viewed as anything other than a potential conqueror by its neighbors.
But let me just quickly add to that, Colonel. Maybe that facade of a good neighbor has been destroyed, but maybe that image of a global power in West Asia, or the biggest power in West Asia, has been established. Do you agree with that? They can fire at any country whenever they want.
Well, they can, you can always, anybody can fire something at a militarily insignificant target or an undefended target. That's always a possibility. I mean, ISIS launched, non-state actor launched significant drone attacks against the Iraqi state when they were being chased out of Mosul. But in order to be militarily significant, you have to be able to destroy military targets. What they're doing here is basically a missile equivalent of a truck bomb or a car bomb. It's random attacks against civilian infrastructure. Obviously, I think there needs to be more focus on defense of civilian infrastructure, but that's going to take a long time. And ultimately, the only cost-effective way to diminish this sort of near-random harassment is by deterrence, which means, and I still think we're going to see a resumption of airstrikes. I'm surprised it's taken so long.
All right, fair enough. I hear your point. And as far as the U.S. president is concerned, Colonel, he started off by calling it an excursion. Just yesterday, or a little over that, we're now calling it a mini war. And at several occasions, he made it clear that Iran came out with a big fight. They really provided that fight to the U.S. U.S. being the military power that it is, Iran did not capitulate. And I think at this point, both sides are looking for a way to exit from a position of strength. They're not waving that white flag of surrender as US would perhaps want, or at least Trump would want. But in terms of Iran, they want to go out in a position of strength. Let's see whether that is going to be possible or not, given the fact that this operation, I think Operation Economic Fury, is hurting Iran. That's the sense you get from the statements that are coming out. Let's wait and watch. Colonel David, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.